Welcome to the Chicago Sun-Times midterm election preview show. I'm Lynn Sweet, coming to you live from the Chicago Sun-Times headquarters in the West Loop. Our election partner and sponsor of this live stream is AARP Illinois, whose survey revealed that Illinois' fiscal crisis should be the top priority of all candidates. Welcome to everyone watching on our website, and if you're following this conversation on Twitter, we're using the hashtag SunTimesLive. That's SunTimesLive. Now, before I get to my guests, happening now in politics. Governor Rauner took a flu shot downtown this morning with his wife Diana, and is actually out stumping today in Markham, Wooddale, with a Get Out the Vote rally tonight in Palatine. Illinois congressional Democrats came together this morning in the county building to give a boost to 6th District candidate Sean Casten, who's in a big race against Republican Peter Roskam. Joining him to talk about the impact of the state and federal tax bills on voters were almost every Democrat from the Chicago area, plus Cook County Board President Tony Preckwinkle, who's running for mayor, but you all know that. There is Democratic Congressman Roger Krishnamurti, Jan Schakowsky, Danny Davis, Bill Foster, Casten, of course, and Chuy Garcia, who's now a Cook County Commissioner, but has nominal opposition in his 4th Congressional District and will be elected a congressman Tuesday night. Joining me now, two men steeped in deep knowledge in politics, locally and nationally. Eric Edelstein, who's a Democratic strategist with a long list of campaigns he's working on, which I'll get to. Pat Brady, who a lot of you know, is the former chair of the Illinois Republican Party. Now, one of the reasons I wanted to talk to Eric is that he does a lot of things when you say you're a strategist. He makes ads. Your clients now include the ads you're making for Attorney General candidate Kwame Raoul, Brad Schneider, the congressman, Roger Krishnamurti, Susana Mendoza, and there's an ad out, by the way, which maybe we'll talk about, that people see as really a precursor to running for mayor, but it's there. And you also work on a national level. You have that big Georgia governor's race and others, but that's probably the ones that people may know the most about. So as we start this conversation now, there are tons of political ads coming on cable, TV, and digital. Eric, I see a lot of negative ads. What is the impact of running so many negative ads in the closing days of a campaign?
Right. Well, there's always this debate. It used to be you always wanted to end positive. You always wanted to end sort of, as they say in the business, swing sets and puppies and kissing babies. And, you know, we've gotten into this constant warfare campaign, the sort of 24/7 campaign, where it's sort of the attitude of never let up on your opponent, keep going, keep pushing forward. Most campaigns now, because of the spending, Lynn, you've covered this for a long time, both sides in these top tier races have so much money that the negatives on the candidates are so high that your race, unfortunately, many times is to the bottom. And so you can't allow your opponent to have their unfavorables decline as you head into election day.
So what do you think this does for turnout, Pat, on both sides, when every TV ad seems, there's a lot of negativity all over in these ads, from races up and down the ticket?
It works.
It works.
It works. Maybe it drives down turnout. I don't know. I think we're going to have a pretty good turnout this election with a lot of negative ads. And I mean, Eric's done some great ads against my candidate, Erica Harrell, very effective ads. So as much as you may not like them, they do work.
Eric, take us backstage. How do you figure out what to put in an ad, either positive or negative? What's the, summarize it. How do you figure out what to do?
It's a combination of art and science, like any other creative endeavor. I think my attitude is the best political advertising are the ones that are authentic. I don't subscribe to the thing that you can take a poll and put words in someone's mouth that aren't realistic to that person. I think it has to be authentic because we all see so much television that we know what's authentic and what's not. I think we're all very sophisticated in how we view television. So to me, the key is finding the authentic voice of the candidate or the message and connecting it in a way that's relevant to voters. And that's what you do.
So one of the things that's happened more in political ads is that they are, and this has actually been going on a while, they're being fact-checked. But ad makers seem to say, I'll take a hit and I do what I want. What is the impact, do you think, I know Peter Roscom had an ad out on healthcare, and PolitiFact, who works with the Chicago Sun-Times on scrutinizing ads, said that it wasn't accurate. But it's running anyway. What is the impact in general of...
It's funny, we were just talking about this. It doesn't seem to matter anymore.
No.
If it's accurate. Back in the old days, an inaccurate ad would be a big problem for you. But now it didn't seem... Maybe it's because of the way the president tends to stretch the truth every day that people aren't as impactful.
I think it's a perfect storm, Lynn, between the rise of money in politics, the decline of political journalism. As you know, there was a heyday in this town and nationally when you guys were the gatekeepers for a lot of this stuff. And if someone were running an ad that was blatantly false, that candidate would pay the price for it. Now that price isn't as high. People aren't reading editorials, they're not reading columnists, they're curating their own news. So unfortunately, in some ways, the ad makers, the amount of money you have, determines whether you can persuade people, not the journalists.
Well, there's also this matter that it's not just cable, television, and radio. We're in an era of digital advertising. Sure. So could you two explain to me what your thinking is on a digital ad? It's cheap, and you could put it up fast. Is there a different... Is it different that you think of digital advertising?
I might defer to Eric on this because we were just talking about this, and I thought you had a good point.
Eric.
Well, in the consumer space, you're seeing 50 to 60% of brand spending is in the digital space.
And that's the big difference this cycle, right?
Yeah, in politics, it's more in the 30 to 40%, but it is rising. And the difference is you can target much more narrowly. You can really get behavioral characteristics that you can't. Television's a blunt medium. I mean, as much targeting as there is, you're talking to a wide swath of people. When you're in digital, you can really narrowcast your message.
So do you prefer as an ad maker, as you look as to how you spend your candidates' money, are you preferring now a targeted digital on social platforms or cable or broadcast?
It's much more challenging from a strategic and a creative standpoint because you need so much more product. Instead of the old days when you have one TV ad, goes on broadcast, you run it for 2 weeks, you take a poll, you see how you're doing. Now you're running one ad on broadcast, maybe a 15-second version of that on digital, and a 6-second version, and then some display ads to targeted audiences. And then every day your client is saying, can I get my analytics? How's my ad doing? Every 2 hours you get data, and we sort of get overwhelmed. So it's a much bigger challenge. Strategically, it's more challenging, it's more interesting. But this is the entire changing landscape of how you persuade people.
So one thing that's interesting, I'm interested in, I hope you are too, you're listening to this, which shows you should be, are a little bit, is that now digital ads are coming out on Hulu and Amazon. What does that say? Is it just, Eric, I think, told me a term I hadn't heard before. They're cord cutters, and there are a vast number of voters there that aren't on TV, aren't on cable, and what is
that's where I am. I'm not on cable.
Are you a cable subscriber?
Yeah, still, but I'm not. Don't know why. My kids aren't.
The analogy is people say, well, when you go into a restaurant, you're not forced to order the entire menu.
Right.
And when you're on cable or satellite, you have to order every channel. And so this generation has said, I don't want that. I want to curate my own broadcast. So.
Okay, so I want to put Eric on the spot moment.
Good.
Everybody ready? Here's the thing. I've known him for many years, so he will take this. The ad you made, Susana Mendoza is running for re-election for Illinois Comptroller. Mm-hmm. She faces Republican Darlene Sanger. An ad you made that was a very upbeat, positive about Susana seemed to be taken by people, and I kind of did too, as a precursor to running for mayor. Now, and she has money because she's in play now and other mayoral candidates can't. I know we're mushing together two campaigns. I believe that she will run for mayor once she wins and if Pritzker wins, because if Rauner wins the governorship, then she won't leave because he would pick her replacement. So can you bring us inside what you were trying to do with that ad, knowing that she might run for mayor?
I mean, look, she's been up front. She says people have talked to her about it. She's certainly looked at it. She's not going to make a decision until the comptroller's race is over. I mean, she does have a race. And I think when you're a statewide elected official, you can't take anything for granted. So we decided to go up on the air with this ad. Now, I will say, because the race hasn't been as contested, it gave us latitude to tell a little bit more about her story, which may have led people to say, oh, this is about something else than it is. But it's a great way to introduce a statewide official in a way that we couldn't do before. She was a soccer star in high school. It's kind of a cool story. She had told it to me when she ran for comptroller the first time, and I just sort of loved the story and thought it would make for a good ad.
And it doesn't hurt. He gets a little bang for the buck. But when we talk about some of the themes in the election, especially in the closing days, I know there's health care and taxes and all that, but I just want to get to the impact of President Trump, especially since now in the closing days of the campaign, he's talking about even ending birthright citizenship, Pat. How does that kind of thing trickle down into the race for governor and state races?
It hurts us in the suburbs. It hurts Republicans in the suburbs. That's the bottom line, yeah.
And tell me why.
Well, I think it's mainly suburban women that don't like a lot of the rhetoric and that don't like President Trump. His numbers are terrible there. So it works. This state, as you know, is very diverse. The further south you get of the city, Trump becomes more and more popular, but you get north of I-80, he's just less popular. And this birthright thing he talked about today, or even the immigration train from Honduras or whatever. I mean, it does not help Republicans.
But
I mean, you know how you win in the state. You win how Mark Kirk won. You got to be a more moderate Republican because you got to have to win that sloth in the suburbs. And then you have to do a certain number downstate and a certain number out of the city. Donald Trump just doesn't do well enough in the suburbs where all the votes are to help our candidates. And he actually hurts our candidates, I think.
So what did you make of Governor Rauner showing up at the Trump rally, given his problems with just consolidating the conservative Trump-oriented base?
You know, it's damned if you do, damned if you don't. I don't think it necessarily came off well because he was in the back of the picture and he wasn't up on the stage. But, you know, maybe up here, maybe that helps him more. Some of the things he did as governor, I've thought all along help him more, where there are more voters than maybe some of the people downstate. But it's a really tough spot for any of our candidates in the metro area to be in on how they handle President Trump, because he's very unpopular here.
So when we talk about...
I mean, Hillary Clinton won by 17 points.
In Illinois.
Almost 1 million votes.
Well, so do you have any sense that, I know the governor, I always kind of look at where candidates are in the closing days, and there are still more votes in Chicago and the Collier counties than in the rest of the state. They almost have to be here on it. So what does it say to you that he's in Wooddale and Palatine today, and even
well, that's where our
Markham?
votes are. I mean, it spreads further west. It's the city, and then the further west you get to the city, that's where the Republican votes are. But on the Trump thing, I don't think it's hurt Governor Rauner as much as it may have hurt some of our congressional candidates that don't necessarily get tied with him. I think the governor's been fairly effective in kind of walking the fine line of not being a Trump person.
So who do you think, what Illinois congressional candidate does it impact the most, the Trump?
Probably Hultgren and Roscoe.
Who are in two of the biggest...
Two of the tough rates. But remember, I still think, I've been hearing since 2006 that Peter Rossum's going to lose, and he always wins. And that district was drawn more for a Republican than for a Democrat. So I think it's a very close race. I think he'll end up coming out ahead. And then same with Randy Hultgren's got a race out in the district just to the west of that.
Another race is that the current chairman of the Illinois Republican Party, Tim Sheridan, who is a Cook County board member... Schneider, has a real Democratic contender, Keith Morrison, who's in there, and he's been campaigning with the ticket. I kind of took it like the Dems just are trying to keep Schneider busy. Do you think he's in any electoral jeopardy?
I think it's a good race, and it's a smart move, and they give the Democrats credit. They're playing in places they typically haven't, and that's because of the Trump effect, I think, and midterm election after the presidential election, so a lot of factors. But I think Tim's okay. But it did keep him distracted, and he's got a campaign.
Well, I mean, just think, Eric, now, as a strategy, what do you think of that? They keep the state party chairman, who had been a pretty outspoken guy talking about the bigger issues, the big state issues. He's anchored to his district now. Well, what do you think of that?
It's helpful to Democrats, and you're seeing it play out in Illinois, and you're seeing it play out nationally. It's two factors, and it's the impact of Trump. One, Democrats have more money than we've ever had before to run these races. And that's allowed us to expand the playing field and compete in districts and in races that we never would have competed before.
Right,
the metro strategy, right?
Yeah.
Spread out from the city. I think the mayor said that yesterday.
Yeah.
Right, it also meant that Schneider, who could have been maybe fundraising for other Republicans, I mean, he's helping out. He's got to just focus on himself. This is a trick. Do you think after the election, I know Republicans had a split.
It's a good trick. Democrats are good at this stuff.
Well, but it's...
As a former party chairman, I know how good they are.
Well, so let me turn to the party. I know that when Schneider was reelected, he had, in a sense, a co-chairman with the Lake County Republican.
Mark Shaw, yeah.
Mark Shaw, what's going to happen, do you think, with the party after this election?
Well, he's like to do a 4-year term, so he'll be there at least. I would assume he would stay on. But I think there is going to be a real debate going forward, depending on what happens on election night, about where the Republican Party needs to be successful. And I think that will be a discussion.
So a discussion if it's the Trump Republicans or the Illinois moderate Republicans or just
how about
whatever?
The Republican Party that can win elections? So we have to be a bigger tent than just either the conservatives or the Trumps or the moderates.
Well, let me widen my tent a little bit for a moment. Since you are working in the Georgia race, can you just give us, this is one of the biggest governor races in the nation, the potential of electing the first African-American woman, and there's charges of her Republican opponent, the Secretary of State, suppressing the vote. In your piece of it, what are you're doing ads and strategery?
Strategery, yeah.
What?
I mean, our firm's been involved in analysts, and my partner's been day-to-day on that. It's an exciting race. We've been with Stacey for 3 years. Stacey Abrams is the candidate. She's the former minority leader of the Georgia House. She's running against Brian Kemp, who's the Secretary of State. Brian Kemp has been a notorious part of this, what's been accused in the South and other states of voter suppression. They have an exact match law where if your hyphen's not right or your period's not right, they can take you off the rolls and say you can't vote. Wow. And that disproportionately affects people.
So you've got a lot to work with then as an ad maker. Are you doing negatives now or positive
both.
at the end?
Yeah, there's a lot of ads up in Georgia right now. A lot of third parties are playing there. It's a dead heat race. There've been a bunch of polls that have come out and showed it even. And they have something else in Georgia which a lot of states don't have, which is a runoff provision if no one gets 50 plus 1.
Oh my God. So we may not have the end of it.
We may have 30 more days of this race.
We're winding down. Vice President Joe Biden is going to be in St. Charles stumping for Sean Casten tomorrow. He'll be in East St. Louis helping Brendan Kelly with the
I live in St. Charles. Maybe I'll invite him over.
Okay. You hear that? United Democratic ticket are going to be in East St. Louis. The Republicans are all fractured. So is that going to have an impact, Biden?
I wouldn't assume that the Republicans are fractured. We just talked to Jeannie Ives, said she's voting for Governor Rauner, and I think both parties always have their issues of people that aren't happy. But I think if you look at the success in the last 10 years of the Republicans, we've had a pretty good run. So we'll wait and see what happens election night.
Right. So I want to plug, as we're coming to our final time here, our Chicago Sun-Times election guide. It is a visual delight. It's easy to get through. You can find it, just Google Sun-Times and election voter guide. It is full of information. We have questionnaires. We have links to candidate pages. If you don't have a lot of time, and I know people don't, it is your one-stop shop for credible information from sources with no access to grind, especially the questionnaires that the Sun-Times had them fill out, is full of issue-based information. And it's just, if you hunger to know more than we could give you now, or even in our reports that we publish, I just want you to go to the voter guide. If you have any interest at all in knowing more but don't have a lot of time, go to the Sun-Times Voters Guide. Now, I want a prediction in the governor's race as we close out our segment here. Who's going to win the governor's race? Pat Brady.
Illinois?
In Illinois.
Lynn, after my 6 months of predicting that Donald Trump could never win the presidency, I'm out of the prediction business. So we'll see what happens.
What do you think, Eric?
J.B. Pritzker will win a very healthy victory on Tuesday night. I can't tell you the spread, but it will be a significant renunciation of 4 years around her.
And how about in the AG's race? What are you predicting?
I think that might be the upset. I think that Eric has Kwame Arul, who's a friend of mine. I love him. But Erica Harold, I think people might come out and vote for her as a check on the Madiger-Pritzker.
And people know how to split tickets in Illinois. Eric, what's your prediction?
There's no question it's a competitive race, but I think Kwame Arul will be the next Attorney General.
So
no more Punch 176 or whatever it was?
Punch 176.
Well, that's where the drama will be. So I encourage you, again, to visit the Sun-Times Voter Guide. It's at suntimes.com/elections for profiles of all the candidates running for statewide office, Cook County and Congress, plus judges. Our live stream sponsor, AARP Illinois, invites you to visit enoughisenough.aarp.org to learn more about how to get involved to hold Illinois' elected officials accountable. On behalf of AARP and the Chicago Sun-Times, we'll be here every day this week at noon, or noonish. See you tomorrow, and vote through November 6th to make your voice heard.